Welcome to Discovering a Wonderful World. Hi guys, it's Neil with Discovering a Wonderful World. And as you know, me and my family went out on the road and we're leading this full-time RV life. In doing that, we decided that we'd like to stay where we want to stay, not just at any campground, but if there's other opportunities to stay places, we'd like to do that and have some modern conveniences. So we decided to hook up solar. Let me tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly of that journey. What I'm going to do is go through kind of the process and then show you the system. So when I decided to put solar on my RV, first I had to look at what space I had, how I thought I was going to do it, and I decided to go to Google and search for RV solar, and primarily looking at what I might need and who was available out there to help me with that project. Here's some of the things I found out. So if you go out and you search Google for solar, you're going to find just a mountain of information. Unfortunately, probably not going to find easily understandable information for somebody who's new at solar. That is the reality. And if you're going out trying to find people who have dealt with RV solar and are installers or people with some expertise, even more difficult. Now, most of us, when you're looking at the RV life, you go to YouTube and you watch channels like this one, and you see a number of people who have put in solar. However, you don't see all the details, and I didn't quite understand what I was getting myself into. The reason I say that is in going to Google and looking this stuff up, it wasn't so easy. I mean, it's a lot of technical stuff. And I don't have an expertise in this. I'll tell you straight out. Now, before I go any further, I want to thank one of my best friends, Brian, his friend Ty, and Bob for their help in finally getting this system straightened out, put together, and working properly. But that was a process. So let's talk about that process. So the first thing I did was I looked at people in my area who did solar and thought, you know, maybe they can help me out with this. And I'm willing to pay them a little bit to help out, you know, give me some advice, whatever it took. However, Louisiana area, when you go look for solar, it's all residential installers. And in fact, in most of the country, that's what you're going to find, is a lot of people who do residential solar. Well, that is a whole different animal from RV solar. This is what I found out. So, having said that, I couldn't just go get somebody. I could see some videos and see some basic stuff on how to put this solar system in. Except when you get to the situation like when you're putting down the panels, that is all about placement and angle, which I will go into later. The reasons why it's all about placement and angle. I didn't know that when I put the system in. I did learn how to get them in there, get them secured, and hopefully make it so my roof never leaks. But there was more to it than I knew. And so I guess my first thought is, maybe when you start out RVing, granted, it's been great to have solar, but you might want to take 2 or 3 months at least, get on the road, talk to some people, and you're going to learn about a multitude of resources out there that, frankly, I didn't know about. The first thing I would tell you is, instead of going to Google, go to Facebook. Look up some Facebook groups, because there's RV solar groups on Facebook. And you can give questions and answers, and they're going to give you lots of advice. Of course, you know, there's going to be some conflicting advice, but they're going to give you lots of advice. And it's going to help you in trying to design the system. So I had watched some YouTube videos, and I'd seen a number of people who were using Battle Born products. Primarily Victron components with Battle Born batteries. And that's what I went with. And that's not bad. There's a lot of bells and whistles to Victron. You've got a great screen that you can look at on your phone and see what's going on. The batteries are good. In fact, they're excellent batteries, and they come with a 10-year warranty. They're not the only batteries out there like that, but they are very good batteries. Now, Battle Born products are expensive. Battle Born also sells Magnum, which is another great brand. If not going through Battle Born itself, I would probably tell you to go to Magnum as a product. If you're going through Battle Born, at least you have them to back you up, because my understanding is that dealing with customer service through Victron is not very easy. But dealing with Battle Born is very easy. And I have talked to a number of their tech support and sales people over the past 3, 4, 5 months through this ordering process, getting what I have, and frankly trying to make sure the products are working the way they're supposed to. I think I'm finally there. But it wasn't an easy process, because I didn't really know exactly what I was doing. And it is a technical process. Now, if you've got a lot of money and you can go out and hire a professional installer, that's a great idea, because they're going to put together the system in an excellent way. But if you're living on a budget like I do, then it's not so easy to just go out there and spend $3,000 or $4,000 to have a system installed, and maybe more with some people, because these systems are not cheap. Each battery was about $1,000. Now, I got a discount because I'm an Escapees member. I highly suggest you do that if you're going to go with Battle Born. And I got a discount on the batteries, the monitor, the solar charge controller, the inverter, all that stuff. So it saved me a lot of money, but it was still expensive. To give you an idea on cost of this system, and this is without any installation, without any discounts, you're looking at about $1,000 for each battery. I have 3. Okay. Inverter is going to cost you about $1,200. The solar charge controller was $700. The monitor was $200. Actually, a little more. The dongle was $70. The wiring, all in all, ended up costing me probably $1,000 for all the wiring and parts. And then you've got a combiner box. Mine was about $350. And then solar panels. I use Renogy solar panels. They're 100 watts each. I have 12 of them. So that was about $1,400 total. So when you add all that up, you come to a figure somewhere between $7,500 and $8,000. And that's just in parts. That's no labor. So just understand, it's not cheap if you want to put together a full-fledged system. But if you do this, it does allow you more freedom. For instance, today, we're parked in an RV spot that doesn't have any hookups, and we'll be fine, because at around 4 o'clock, we'll be at 100% charge. Probably tomorrow morning, we'll be at about a 40 or 50% charge, and then we'll charge up again tomorrow. And occasionally we may have to stop somewhere and get it back to 100% if we don't get a lot of sun on a day. But in general, we should be fine. That wasn't always the case, because when we hooked up the system, we made a few mistakes because the guys that helped me initially hook up the system, frankly, were residential solar guys. And RV solar is different. But they did a great job and it worked. It just didn't work to its peak performance. So then I had to go back in, change some wiring, because we used regular house wiring. Granted, they were big cables, some of them were 4/0 cables, but it was regular house wiring that you'd hook up a solar system in a residential home. And for an RV, you would be much better off using welding wire, which is 100 times the number of strands, maybe more, and the charge goes through it better. Also, we didn't initially take the converter out of the system. Now it is, so it's working more efficiently. And through all this, it was a learning process. And thanks to someone I met on the road who's become a friend of mine named Bob, we got the system straightened out, and now it was working correctly. But it took some time. So just be aware that it's a process. And if you're going to start out with solar, you're probably going to go through some challenges. But in the end, it'll be worth it. Now, make no mistake, if you don't plan on using this RV over a long period of time, or being a full-time RV traveler, then you're probably going to be in a situation that it's not going to be cost effective, because I've already told you the upfront cost. If you need to get somebody to install this for you, that cost is going to go up by about 33%. So just be aware, it's not cheap. And even in my case, I'm looking at probably 2 years of RVing on a consistent basis before this system pays for itself and I start to see the fruits of my system. So let's get into the system. Let me show you around, show you what's going on. Please, if you're an expert out there, understand I am not. So if I say something a little incorrectly, or you see something that maybe isn't perfect in this video, don't hesitate to comment down below and let me know. And if you have advice for people, once again, please comment down below and share that with the audience, because every piece of advice is valuable when it comes to putting together a solar outfit. Okay, so here we are up on top of the RV. And as I stated earlier, this is all about placement and angle as far as what kind of solar you're actually going to get. And here's where I'm going to describe at least one mistake. So first of all, you can see how these are placed. Now, some of these I have on S5 mounts. Some of these I have on Renogy mounts. And then some of these I have on what's called a strut channel with angle mounts. Here's the differences. Okay, so these panels are rated at about 5.7 amp hours. These will bring in about 3.5 amps of solar mounted this direction towards the sun. Okay, on the back side of the sun at this time of year, these get about 2.8 amps of solar, these four. Okay, now down here, this one also gets about 2.8 amps of solar. Now here's a fundamental mistake you don't want to make. All right, depending on the time of year, now I would imagine full summer, direct sun, you're going to do all right with this panel. But right now, the sun comes up on basically the south side and goes across, so it never goes straight over the RV. And since it doesn't go straight over the RV, this panel is always somewhat shaded by the air conditioner. Being shaded by the air conditioner even a little bit causes this panel to get almost no production whatsoever. It gets like 0.2 amps production. So it's really bad. One thing I should tell you is if anything shades these, they lose almost all their production. It could be something as simple as your hand, that much, and if you put a meter on this, you've got your hand over here, you're not going to get any production. You take your hand away, you're going to go back up to the 2.8 that this one would normally get at this time of year. These over here, I did not realize exactly how much difference these would make when I put this up. But on this angle, if they're down, let's start with, if they're down, they're going to get about 3.5 amps, each one of them. When you put them up, they get about 5.5 amps consistently. So just these 4 panels get you 8 amps extra charge. That doesn't sound like a lot, but that is a lot when you're talking about this kind of system. So definitely having the angles on them and being able to utilize that makes a huge difference in the solar production you're going to get. Now I'm going to take a break and go ahead and put them down, show you what that looks like. So stay tuned. So here's what they look like when they're down. And like I said, they're going to get around 2 amps less production for each panel in this position. Now, honestly, I don't put them up all the time. If I'm only staying at a place for a couple of days, I'm not going through the hassle of coming out and taking the half hour to put them up and then coming out and the half hour to put them down. If I'm going to stay, say, 4 days or more someplace, then I'll go ahead and do that. But it is going to take you 20 minutes to a half hour to put them up and put them down each way. You know, if I was a wealthy man, I would probably have some kind of hydraulic system on them where I could just push a button and they went up into place. And that would be great. But I'm afraid the cost of that system would be fairly expensive. And, you know, I tried to cut corners where I could. Obviously, in putting this together, I didn't really know what I was doing exactly from the start. I'd watched a couple videos, but I didn't understand the importance of placement and angle. And obviously, I wouldn't have put that panel behind the air conditioner had I realized the consideration of placement. Now, as far as the wiring, 2 panels to a socket, so I didn't have to bring down as many wires, although there are quite a few wires coming through that go down. That's the box that they go into to go ahead and send them down to the rest of the system. Make sure you keep them fairly clean. A little feather duster or something, or it'll clean them off. Sometimes you got to wipe them down if you've, you know, been in a fairly dirty situation. We went through an ice storm. Didn't hurt the panels, but it did make them quite dirty, and I had to come up with an actual rag and wipe them down to get them cleaner. And you can see in putting this down, I used quite a bit of self-leveling die core where I'd put in the bolts because I don't want any leaks, and that's a lot of holes in your roof. So I keep a pretty good eye on that to see if there's anything that might be showing or might cause a leak at some point. I also put self-leveling die core over the wires to kind of keep them down. I don't know that that's the greatest system, but that's what we did. And like I said, if anybody out there has any suggestions or tips or advice on things I might be able to do to improve the system or just make it more manageable, please feel free to comment down below. I would love that. Let's go down and see the inside system. So let's get into the interior system. But first, I think it's a great time to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you can see all of our videos when they come out. So here's the fuse panel. I've taken the cover off, And this is basically for those of you like me who perhaps have no idea what this system is really about. Okay, so the initial hookup, the power came into here, which now goes into here, but comes back over to the inverter. This is the converter, okay? And that had to be taken out of the system. So if you can see this red wire and the black wire that's behind here, that is the original wires that went to here. And I don't know if you can see this or not, but down way back in there, we've got those tucked away. That converter is not hooked up anymore. It's a straight shot straight into the inverter and the batteries. So these wires are actually going over to the batteries and the inverter at this point. And the converter, first of all, the breaker is turned off. It says converter leave off, and it's not hooked up anyways. So this system is under the bottom bunk on the bunk beds, and let's get into it. So first of all, these wires are coming down from the roof, and they come down and they go into this combiner box. The combiner box is from Ames. Let's see if I can get into that for you. And as you can see in there, it's got a main breaker. Every single wire in there, you can individually turn off those breakers for each of those panels up top if you had to work on the system. Or you can turn off the main and shut down the whole system. Anyway, moving out of there, then what happens is, once it goes past there, it goes to the solar charge controller. Power goes into there. Your positive wire goes over to the last battery. That's that smaller wire on there. These are 4-aught cables between the batteries, and that is a number 4 cable going into the battery from the solar charge controller. The negative lead comes over here to the shunt, and it's on the load side of the shunt. If you've got a Victron system, this is the way it works. Now you can see each battery is wired together, and then the negative side goes into this side of the shunt. The positive side goes into another breaker and then over to the inverter. At the inverter, then you have that positive wire coming in and the negative from the shunt coming in. Now your monitors and such are hooked up through this dongle, which allows me to see it on the phone, and it's all powered in to the positive lead on the first battery, and the negative is coming right over here. So it just gives you an idea of how this is set up, and we went with 4-aught cable into this inverter. So when I first set this system up, we had a question of whether that could get in there, and we did 2 smaller wires into that inverter, but we figured out that you could take 4-aught cable into the inverter, which makes it a more powerful system, the bigger cable, and it is a welding wire cable. Originally I had set this up with regular housing wire. I think it's called TNN something. Anyway, it's got like 7 strands inside of it, and it's a big wire. It's very rigid, but the way wiring works is it runs around the outside of that wire, around the outside edges. Well, this has hundreds of strands inside of it, and so it's a much different type of cable, and it just allows for a freer flow of the electricity in there. That's what we rewired just recently. So anyway, that is the system. And if you have any questions or anything you'd like to let me know, we went through a bunch of revisions on this. Like I said, the wiring was incorrect as far as the type of wire we used in the first place. It worked, but it was incorrect, and it didn't work as efficiently. So when we redid this, we redid it with correct wiring. We took the converter out of the system. We also added some grounds. So there's number 8 bare wire for 2 grounds that go to both the inverter and the Ames box. And then the main ground on the system is this 4-aught wire that goes all the way down and is grounded to the frame. I also put in a couple air vents so that it wouldn't get too hot underneath here, and it'd have a little bit of a vent if necessary. I hope you like the tour of this little system, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask in the comments. If you have any ideas or anything that you think might help me, that'd be great too. I always like to have some helpful advice. I will tell you that we had a hard time getting the monitor set up so it was reading correctly, but it just took figuring out which wires went where, and a couple little revisions made that work perfectly now. This is what you want. It's 3,000 watts of solar panels. He installed them above the air conditioners, so there's nothing blocking the sun if you're out in the open. Obviously here there is a telephone pole that does block, but in most cases there's going to be nothing blocking it, so you'll get a full charge. And what he plans to do to this system is put gas struts over here, so this will lift up at the 45-degree angle, and then that's just a massive amount of power coming in. But he has 10 lithium-ion batteries on this, so this will produce power forever. It's just an awesome layout. So if I was going to do it again, I would lift these panels up, take them right over the air conditioners, have the gas struts that lifted the panel up to the 45-degree angle, so I could just push them down and lock them in, and the whole system would be working very efficiently. Even where the wires come down, it's very organized. There's not wires hanging all over everything. You've got PVC pipe going into the drop down in a couple different areas, and it makes it nice and neat. And here's a look down below again. It's a pretty incredible system. So on the good side, you have the freedom that this allows you. And it is a lot more freeing when you don't have to worry about an electrical hookup. You can go wherever you want. And as long as there's room to park the RV, you're good. On the bad side, well, there's a lot of glitches, especially if you try to put the system together, or try to put the system together on some kind of reasonable budget, and you can't afford a professional installer. Well, you're going to run into some glitches, and you're going to have to try to figure that out and get it working out right. So make sure you're with a good company who will help walk you through that process, because it's not easy. Anybody who thinks any novice can do this, yeah, jump on it. It is not an easy task. You're going to need some help if you don't have any idea what you're doing. And even if you do, even if you've done residential solar, this is a different ball game. So just be aware, study hard, do what you can, but expect some problems, and know you've got to figure out how to fix those problems. And finally, the ugly, and that's the cost of these systems. They're going to cost you some money. If you want to get this system set up right, it's going to cost you some money. So just be aware, the cost can get up there. So be prepared for that. If you're going to spend that money, make sure you're going to be out on the road for a while. Make sure this is what is right for you. Don't jump in blindly. Understand what those costs are. And mentioning cost, if you're an Escapees member, I believe it's a 15% discount through Battleborn. So if you're going to go with Battleborn, definitely get that $40, $50 membership to Escapees, because that's going to save you a huge amount of money. So I hope this video has helped you out a little bit. I'd really appreciate it if you smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you can see when our next video comes out. And what we aim to do is to learn together on this journey. So when I make a mistake, I have no problem putting it out there for you to see things that I did wrong and maybe help you not to do those things the same way. Thanks for watching, and be blessed. Hey, if you're wondering where I'm at, I'm in Tombstone, Arizona.